Marcus Jen pulled his worn leather jacket tighter as he stood in front of the bank's glass doors. Reflected faintly in the glass was someone very different from the powerful CEO he once was. Gone were the tailored suits, confident smile, and meticulously styled hair featured in the portrait hanging prominently at the bank's headquarters. Today he was just another man in a plain white shirt, faded jeans, and a week's worth of unshaved stubble. Taking a deep breath, Marcus pushed open the doors of branch 471, a branch whose every detail, from the tile flooring to the layout of the furniture, had once passed under his approval. But now, there was no manager waiting to greet him, no fast-track access to executive floors. Instead, he quietly stepped into line like every other customer. Over the past 3 months, customer satisfaction had plummeted. Complaints poured in, and the board was demanding answers. But Marcus knew spreadsheets and reports could never tell the whole story. To understand the problem, he had to immerse himself in it. His eyes scanned the waiting area, faces filled with fatigue, frustration, resignation. The space was designed to instill trust and calm, but now it felt stifling, like something had gone deeply wrong. A tense conversation in the corner caught Mark's attention. A well-dressed, middle-aged man was speaking, his voice tight with anger, each word strained but sharp. "This is ridiculous. I've been with this bank for 20 years. Perfect payment history. My business is thriving. And they denied my loan request, without a single valid explanation." Sitting across from him was an elderly woman, clutching a worn leather handbag as if it were the last thing she could hold on to. Her hands trembled slightly, her eyes clouded with a mix of confusion and quiet panic. "I understand, dear," she said softly, her voice heavy with pain. "I saved all my life so my granddaughter could go to college, and now the money is just gone, vanished, and no one here will give me a straight answer." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his chest. As CEO, he knew every financial discrepancy should come with documentation, a clear paper trail. But what he was hearing now didn't sound like isolated errors. They sounded like symptoms of something far more disturbing. He stepped a little closer, pretending to examine a mortgage brochure, while really trying to hear more of their conversation. The man, who introduced himself as James Cooper, leaned in and lowered his voice. "My sister went through the same thing. She runs a successful restaurant and applied for a business expansion loan. They kept dragging it out, until someone quietly suggested she could speed up the process by making an unofficial payment." Marcus froze. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was a hint of corruption within the very institution he was supposed to lead. The elderly woman's eyes widened in shock. Her voice cracked. "You mean a bribe? In this bank?" Before James could answer, a bank employee called out, "Mrs. Reynolds, window 3, please." She stood, nodded politely, and shuffled toward the counter. Every step she took seemed weighed down by defeat and desperation. Marcus watched in silence, unable to shake the image of trust slowly being stripped from her with each passing moment. James turned back, offering Marcus a business card. "I'm James Cooper. If you're dealing with something similar, or if you want to do something about it, get in touch. We can't stay quiet forever." Marcus accepted the card wordlessly. Inside, a chill was beginning to spread, one that no data report had ever shown. The marble walls around him felt like they were cracking, exposing a truth he had long refused to see. At the counter, the teller's face remained emotionless, her voice flat and robotic as she read from a prepared script. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but as we've explained in previous responses, all transactions on your account appear to be properly authorized." The words were like cold steel, slicing through the last thread of hope in Mrs. Reynolds. Her lips trembled. Her voice was hoarse, nearly breaking. "I've filed 3 complaints already. 3. My husband Harold worked himself into the ground. 2 jobs, all so our granddaughter could go to college. And now, it's all gone." Marcus stood behind her, heart heavy. He clutched the phone in his pocket, the same phone that had just buzzed with a notification. He'd submitted a loan application under an alias just the day before as part of his undercover investigation. "We regret to inform you that your loan application has been denied." He stared at the screen, stunned. The profile he'd built for this false identity was flawless. Excellent credit score, stable income, zero debt. There was absolutely no reason for a denial, but now the pieces were fitting together. James Cooper denied, despite perfect credentials. Mrs. Reynolds, her life savings wiped out. James's sister, pressured into paying a bribe. And now him, CEO of the bank, also rejected by a process he thought he understood. This wasn't incompetence. It was a pattern. Suddenly, shouting erupted from across the lobby. "I want to speak to the branch manager," Mrs. Reynolds shouted. "You can't just make my money disappear and hide behind your damn policies." Two security guards moved toward her, calm but cold. They placed their hands gently on her shoulders, but there was no kindness in the gesture. The other customers looked on, some startled, others averted their gaze, unwilling to get involved. "Please," she cried, her voice breaking. "My granddaughter's future depends on that money. I just want answers." The door shut behind her, silencing the room. Within moments, the bank returned normal. Keyboards clicking, staff calling out names, as though nothing had happened. But Marcus couldn't look away. The image of Mrs. Reynolds' tearful face burned in his memory. The way the other customers looked away, it all felt wrong. He turned toward the branch manager's office. What started as a customer experience check was no longer a corporate exercise. This had become a full-blown investigation into a system he no longer trusted. Marcus walked to the counter. "I'd like to speak with whoever handled my loan application," he said firmly. "And this time, I won't be taking no for an answer." Inside a small, windowless office, adorned with hollow motivational posters, Marcus sat across from Sarah Fleming, the loan officer. She looked nervous, shuffling through paperwork with trembling fingers. "Mr. Lee," she said, using his undercover alias, "I understand your frustration, but our system uses a very complex algorithm. It evaluates based on multiple risk factors." Marcus didn't respond. His eyes fell on a small sticky note next to her keyboard. Scrawled on it were a phone number and the words, "Call for expedited approval." She noticed his gaze, panicked, and quickly crumpled the note, tossing it into the trash. "What specific criteria did I fail to meet?" Marcus asked, pulling out full documentation. Proof of income, assets, and a flawless credit history. Before she could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed again. Local entrepreneur Derek Jean bankrupt after abrupt loan denial from Meridian Trust investigation underway. Marcus's heart sank. Derek Jean. Only one restaurant owner. The same man James Cooper had mentioned, Ben Jean Derek Jean, a well-known restaurant owner the same man James Cooper had mentioned. Ben Jean Derek Jean was found qualified to open Dave 7. The puzzle was almost complete. The image it painted was grim and getting darker. Sometimes the system detects risks that people can't immediately see, Sarah whispered, glancing toward the door, where no one else could hear them. Marcus knew. He was getting close to a truth not only shocking but potentially capable of shattering the very foundation of the bank he had spent years building. But this time, there was no turning back. The office door quietly closed behind him, yet the air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Sarah lowered her voice, glanced around cautiously, and spoke slowly. "Of course, there are special approval channels, if you're really interested. I could connect you with someone who handles these exceptional cases." Her tone was light, almost casual, but the weight of her words hit like a hammer. Marcus didn't need more detail. This was the missing puzzle piece from James Cooper's warning. An underground loan approval network. And the cost? "How much?" Marcus asked calmly. though a fire was already raging inside him. Sarah didn't hesitate. For a $50,000 0-cent loan like yours, the processing fee would be $5,000, 0 cents, in cash. No invoice, no receipt. The way she said it, smooth, without shame, made it clear this wasn't a one-time thing. It was standard practice in this office. Right at that moment, the door flew open. A young woman burst in, her face streaked with tears. "Mrs. Fleming, please, I need to speak with you about my mother's account." "Mrs. Tran." Sarah's demeanor shifted instantly, from nervous to cold and mechanical. "I'm with a client, Miss Tran, and as we've already explained, the transactions have all been properly authorized." "But my mother has dementia. She couldn't have authorized those transfers, and now the nursing home is threatening to evict her because the payments bounced." The woman's voice cracked with desperation. Marcus felt his blood boil. This wasn't just about missing money. This was about a life being pushed to the edge by a broken system. Sarah didn't respond. Instead, she quietly pressed a button under her desk. Within moments, 2 security guards entered, expressionless as machines. They escorted the woman out, ignoring her pleas and tears. As the doors shut behind them, Sarah turned back to Marcus with a strained smile. "Sorry about the interruption. Regarding the special approval channel, I'll need a bit of time to get in touch." "No rush," Marcus replied, his voice like ice. "By the way, who's in charge of that channel? I'd like a name and contact just so I know who to follow up with." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then scribbled a name and phone number on a small piece of paper. "Mel Wong, Senior Coordinator." Marcus glanced at the name. Mel Wong. That wasn't unfamiliar. He remembered the promotion meeting 6 months ago. Wong had been appointed despite not being the strongest candidate, a decision that raised eyebrows at the time. And now the reason was becoming clear. As he left the bank, Marcus immediately called Janet Cho, the most trusted and sharp-minded auditor he knew. "Janet, I need a full audit of all loan rejections over the past 6 months. Focus on applicants with high credit scores. Also look for any unusual withdrawals, especially from elderly clients or those with signs of cognitive decline." That's going to be a lot of data. Thousands of transactions. What exactly are we looking for? Anything that doesn't add up. And Janet, this stays between us. Don't trust anyone else with this. He hung up. As Marcus walked toward his car, he noticed a black sedan with tinted windows parked across the street. When he got into his vehicle, the sedan quietly pulled out and began to follow him. His heartbeat quickened. Someone was watching. As soon as he got home, his phone vibrated again. A new anonymous message. "You're asking dangerous questions. Derek Zhang did too. And now he's silent forever. Stop before it's too late." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Derek, the restaurant owner who had been mysteriously denied a loan, his death no longer felt like coincidence. Maybe he had known too much. Marcus jumped back into his car, driving erratically through several routes, trying to lose any tail. On his way back, another message came in. This time from Janet. "Boss, I found something big. Can't send it over the network. Meet me in person. 7 a.m. tomorrow. Coffee shop 2 blocks from my place." Marcus replied to confirm. But before he could power off his phone, another message arrived, even more unsettling. "We know who you really are, Mr. Jin. The question is, do your shareholders know where their money is going?" Marcus sat in his car in the dark, the soft glow of the streetlights casting long shadows through the windshield. Everything he thought he knew, every system he'd believed in, was unraveling. What began as a simple undercover audit had now turned into a high-stakes race for survival. Tomorrow's meeting with Janet could change everything, if he lived long enough to make it. The Coffee Bean Cafe was nearly empty at 7 a.m. Aside from a few regulars nursing their early morning caffeine, the air was quiet and sleepy. Marcus sat in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee, eyes locked on the front door. Janet was already 10 minutes late. For someone as notoriously punctual as her, that was a red flag. When his phone finally rang, the number was unfamiliar. His gut told him exactly what he didn't want to hear. "Mr. Chin." Janet's voice was a whisper, nearly drowned out by static. "Don't come to the cafe. Someone's watching. Meet me at St. Mary's Hospital, 5th floor waiting area. Come alone." The line went dead. Marcus didn't hesitate. He dropped a few bills on the table and left. On the way to the hospital, he changed taxis twice, checking his mirrors, watching for tails. The 5th floor was the oncology ward, quiet and somber. Janet sat alone in the waiting area, still in yesterday's clothes, her hair disheveled, her face pale. "They broke into my apartment last night," she said without greeting. Her hands trembled as she handed him a small USB drive. "They took my laptop, but they didn't find this. I hid it in my grandmother's old jewelry box." Marcus clenched the USB tightly. "The data on this," Janet continued, her voice hoarse with stress, "is evidence of a massive fraud network. Loan denials and account drains are just the surface. This goes much deeper." She pulled out a notebook filled with scrawled numbers and markings. "Every time a legitimate loan is denied, a much riskier one, same amount, is approved within days. But they go to shell companies, all leading to a single offshore account." Marcus flipped through the pages. Codes, dates, transaction chains. It all lined up. "They're not just laundering money," Janice said, almost choking on the words. "They're funding something much bigger. That offshore account, it regularly pays out to 4 senior executives at our bank. Michael Wong is just the smallest fish." Just then, Janet's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face turned pale. She handed it to Marcus. On the screen was a photo of her daughter walking out of school. The attached message read, "Cute kid. It'd be a shame if something happened to her. Go. Get your daughter and get somewhere safe," Marcus said firmly, his voice low and unwavering. But Janet gripped his arm tightly. "There's one more thing. 3 months ago, the pattern changed. The accounts being targeted weren't just ordinary customers anymore. They were military personnel, government employees, people with access to sensitive information. This isn't just about money anymore." A nurse walked over. "Miss Cho, your mother's test results are ready." Janet frowned. "I don't have a mother here." Marcus understood instantly. The nurse was reaching into her pocket, and he caught a glint of metal. A weapon? Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed Janet's hand and pulled her toward the emergency stairwell. Their footsteps echoed like gunshots through the eerily silent corridor. The parking garage loomed ahead, dim and cold. They bolted through a side exit, one Marcus had mentally noted upon arrival. "My car's at the shop," Janet gasped. "Take mine," he said, tossing her the keys. "There's a cabin at Mount Ridge under my grandmother's name. The address is saved in the GPS. Drive straight there, don't stop." As she sped off, Marcus melted into the shadows. He pulled the USB from his pocket, holding it like it contained the heart of the entire war. He couldn't go back to the office. It was likely under surveillance. His house? Even worse. Every move he made now had to be calculated, like a chess player with enemies closing in from all sides. He sank onto the cold concrete, breath slowing as his heart pounded beneath the crushing weight of the truth. One mistake, and it was all over. Not just his career, but his life. Tomorrow, if he was still alive, he would have to expose everything. Then it hit him. The old server room in the bank's basement. It had been decommissioned during last year's tech upgrade, but his executive keycard still worked. More importantly, it wasn't connected to the main network, making it virtually untraceable. Getting into the bank wasn't difficult. Despite the secret investigation, he was still the CEO. That title still unlocked every door. The basement was quiet, filled only with the hum of outdated machines. The server room door clicked open. Inside, the dim fluorescent lights flickered, casting a sickly glow. Marcus exhaled in relief. The main terminal was still functional. He plugged in the USB and began scanning the contents. Thousands of files, transaction logs, email chains, surveillance photos. But one folder made him freeze. Project Phoenix. Opening it felt like opening Pandora's box. Every file was a hammer blow to everything he thought he knew. This wasn't just financial fraud. It was a covert intelligence operation. Loan denials and account wipes were tools used to pressure people with access to military base codes, diplomatic data, and security protocols. Meridian Trust Bank was just one node in a vast international conspiracy. He almost didn't hear the footsteps echoing down the hall. Marcus yanked out the USB, tucked it into his jacket, and ducked behind an old server rack. The door opened. Under the flickering light, he saw Michael Wong enter, followed by a voice that made Marcus's stomach turn. Thomas Bradford, head of security. A man Marcus had trusted with his life. "The CEO is getting too close," Bradford said, his tone steely. "He needs to be eliminated." "What about the auditor?" Wong asked nervously. "She'll be handled. But Chin is the real threat. The committee has made its decision. He has to disappear before he exposes everything. The CEO's death will raise red flags." Eyes. "Not if we make it look like suicide. The stress of leading a failing bank, buried scandals. It'll be convincing enough." Marcus held his breath. After they left, he waited a few more minutes before moving. Every step felt like walking on ice. What he'd just heard confirmed it. This went far beyond his bank. The committee? Multiple banks? An international intelligence network using financial institutions as fronts? He pulled out his phone but hesitated. If Bradford was involved, any communication could be compromised. He needed proof, not just claims. Then he remembered something from the Project Phoenix files. An upcoming meeting. A time, a place. Tonight. An abandoned warehouse in the old industrial district. All of the committee's local representatives would be there. 6 hours. That's all he had. 6 hours to uncover the truth and survive. But he couldn't do it alone. There was only one person he could think of. James Cooper. The man whose loan had been denied. The one who had been threatened and, according to internal reports, a former FBI agent specializing in financial crimes. Marcus tracked him down to a small accounting office tucked away downtown. Without knocking, he entered and quietly closed the door behind him. "Mr. Cooper, I think we share the same goal, exposing what's happening inside Meridian Trust." James looked up, his expression guarded. "Who are you? I know your loan denial wasn't random. I know about the bribe your sister was offered, and I know you used to work for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." Tension filled the air like electricity. Cooper narrowed his eyes, then slowly stood. "Go on," he said, voice low and measured. "I'm listening." James Cooper's expression shifted, doubt fading into cautious calculation. After a few seconds of silence, he gave a slow nod. "You've done your homework, but you still haven't told me who you are." Marcus looked him in the eye, for the first time, hiding nothing. "I'm the CEO of Meridian Trust Bank, and I need your help to expose a conspiracy that's not just about fraud. It's a threat to national security." For the next hour, Marcus laid everything out. Every piece of evidence, every coded file, every name and thread. Cooper listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes with clinical precision. "What you're describing," he finally said, "matches something I investigated 10 years ago in Asia. Banks were being infiltrated, used to collect intelligence through financial pressure, but we never figured out who was behind it." He looked up, his gaze sharp. "Well, now you have proof." Marcus placed the USB on the table. "There's a secret meeting tonight. All the key players will be there." Cooper immediately shook his head, his posture tense. "It's a trap. They know you've got the intel. They're waiting. Marcus gave a dry smile, eyes sharp as steel. I know. But what they're not expecting is the plan I've already set in motion. For the next several hours, they went into full preparation mode. Cooper mobilized former colleagues from the private security sector, operatives no longer tied to easily compromised government systems. Marcus, meanwhile, leveraged his CEO-level access, slipping into old system backdoors, paths only those who helped build the original infrastructure would know. But they needed one more piece, a technical expert who could break through layers of encryption and firewalls. Marcus thought of Kevin Jensen, of Derek, the restaurateur who had died under suspicious circumstances after a loan denial. Kevin was a cybersecurity prodigy. Since his father's death, he had gone completely off-grid. They found Kevin inside the cold kitchen of his father's shuttered restaurant, surrounded by screens and wires, as though he were programming revenge. Once he heard the full story, his eyes lit up. Not with grief, but with a burning hunger for justice. They're preparing to offload all the data overseas tonight, Kevin explained, fingers flying across his keyboard. If they succeed, the evidence is gone for good. The plan came together quickly. Kevin would handle the digital front, intercepting, monitoring, and capturing data. Cooper's security team would secure the perimeter, and Marcus, he would do the unthinkable, walk straight into the enemy stronghold. You're insane, Cooper said, frowning. They're hunting you, and you plan to serve yourself up to them? If they want me, Marcus replied, voice low and resolute. I'll make sure they can't resist. And maybe, just maybe, I'll drag them into the light. At 9:00 p.m., Marcus parked outside the decrepit warehouse. In his earpiece, Kevin's voice came through. Surveillance looped. Cameras are showing old footage. Security team in position. I'm reading 12 heat signatures. Second floor, main room. Marcus adjusted the mic hidden in his jacket, his eyes fixed on the black doorway ahead. No matter what happens, make sure the data gets out. This isn't about me anymore. He stepped forward, his shadow stretching long over the cracked concrete. A guard stopped him, but Marcus simply flashed his CO badge. They're expecting me. The guard made a call, then nodded. Marcus climbed the stairs. Kevin's voice crackled again. Interference detected. They've started the data transfer. The second floor was dimly lit. A large table sat in the center, surrounded by familiar faces. Michael Wong, Thomas Bradford, and 3 members of Marcus's own board. But seated at the head of the table was someone who made Marcus freeze. Richard Chin, his older brother, presumed dead in a boating accident 10 years ago. Hello, Marcus, Richard said calmly, as though he hadn't been missing for a decade. I knew you'd come. Marcus felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Pain, rage, disbelief, they all hit at once. It was all he could manage, because someone had to stop America's enemies from exploiting its financial system. Richard answered. Everything we did. Information gathering, strategic pressure. It was to protect this country, by robbing innocent people, by pushing them into desperation, by causing deaths, Marcus snapped. Necessary sacrifices for a greater goal. Wars aren't always fought with bullets. Sometimes they're fought with numbers. Inside bank accounts. Richard stood, arms open like he was welcoming a long-lost ally. Join us, Marcus, with your credibility, your name. We could do what no one else dares. Control the system from within. Before Marcus could respond, Kevin's voice rang in his ear, sharp and urgent. Data transfer at 60%. We've got a problem. They're tracking our breach. An alarm blared. The door slammed open. Armed guards poured in. Amid the chaos, Richard remained calm, almost smug. Your friends are here, Marcus. You didn't think we weren't prepared for this, did you? But Marcus smiled too, eyes gleaming. No, I was counting on it. The lights cut out, total darkness. In the tense silence that followed, Kevin's triumphant voice came through. The FBI Cyber Division has control. All data secured. Emergency lights flicked on. From all sides, FBI agents stormed the room. Leading them was James Cooper, now in tactical gear, a laser-sighted firearm in hand. Richard Chin, you're under arrest for espionage, fraud, and financial manipulation. Richard raised his hands, not in fear, but in sorrow. As they cuffed him, he turned to Marcus, not with anger, but with deep disappointment. You don't understand, Richard said. We were the last line of defense. Everything I did was to protect this country. Marcus replied softly, eyes devoid of triumph, only grief. No, you and the others were just another threat this country needed to eliminate. The raid was a success. The system had been cracked wide open. The criminal network exposed. The evidence secured. But no one in that room felt relief. Marcus stood motionless as his brother was led away. Flashing lights danced across Richard's face, the same face Marcus had once idolized as a child. Now he was just the architect of a nightmare. His phone buzzed. A message from Janet. Turn on the TV. This isn't over. By morning, every major network was broadcasting the story. CEO Marcus Chin exposes massive bank fraud. But the more Marcus watched, the more unsettled he felt. The reports had been sanitized, reframed. Every channel painted it as internal corruption, a scandal limited to one institution. No mention of international espionage. Inside the executive office, on the top floor of Meridian Trust, Marcus sat before a wall of monitors, flipping between news channels. Across from him, Janet scrolled through her tablet, her expression unreadable. Someone's controlling the narrative, Janet muttered. All the major networks are pushing the same angle, the espionage element, completely buried. The office door swung open. Elizabeth Morrison, head of communications, walked in, holding a stack of papers. We've prepared your statement for the emergency board meeting. Marcus took it and skimmed quickly. The speech was crafted carefully, praising him as a hero, yet subtly implying that he may have been negligent in oversight. Who wrote this? Marcus asked, his tone cold. Riser Crisis Response Team. And Elizabeth hesitated. Some external consultants. What consultants? She didn't get the chance to answer. Marcus's private line rang. The caller ID. Unknown number. He picked up. A voice spoke through a voice modulator. Impressive, Marcus. You dismantled Richard's network. But this isn't over. Who are you? Someone who knows Richard was just a pawn on a much larger board. Check your email. Marcus opened his laptop. A video file was attached. Footage from secret meetings involving high-ranking officials, rival bank CEOs, and one face that hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. Samuel Davidson. His mentor. His predecessor. The man who once taught Marcus to lead with honor. Davidson retired 3 years ago, Marcus whispered. He cross-check his travel records, Janet said as she typed rapidly. Match them against major financial crises. Seconds later, her screen lit up with a tangled web of connections. Market crashes, illicit transfers, Davidson's appearances. All perfectly aligned. Marcus stared at the data map, his worldview crumbling before his eyes. The name, Global Financial Security Initiative, appeared on the screen like a dark mark resurrected from a quiet past. A secretive organization funded by an alliance of international banking moguls, manipulating markets and governments under the guise of global stability. The voice on the phone returned, sharper and colder. Richard only opened the door to the truth. He got caught. Now it's your turn. Marcus stood frozen, the words hitting him like heavy rain on cracked glass. Why should I trust you? He asked. Because in exactly 1 hour, Davidson will be meeting the initiative's founding board at the Sterling Hotel. If you want the truth, be there. But tell no one. They hear everything. And they are everywhere. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Janet, then glanced at Elizabeth, who was pretending to be engrossed in her phone, but her eyes were avoiding his. "Elizabeth," he said calmly, "who exactly instructed you to prepare that speech?" She hesitated, then dodged the question. I need to prepare for the board meeting," she mumbled and rushed out of the room, not meeting his gaze. "Follow her," Marcus whispered to Janet. "But carefully. She may not be alone." Alone in his office, Marcus reopened Davidson's personnel file. On the surface, it was perfect. Model CEO, timely retirement, no scandals. But beneath the surface, beneath shell companies and false identities, a transaction network began to take shape. Every major financial collapse of the last decade led back to the same group of accounts, all linked to the Global Financial Security Initiative. His phone buzzed. A message from Janet. "Elizabeth just called security. They're heading up. Get out, now." Without a second thought, Marcus grabbed his laptop. He knew the elevators would be compromised. The only way out was through the old maintenance shaft hidden behind his bookshelf, a relic from before the building was renovated. He yanked the panel open and climbed inside, just as the office door slammed open. Through the slats, he saw shadows sweep in, armed. Leading them was Elizabeth, now speaking coldly into her phone. "He's gone." "Yes, Mr. Davidson. We'll find him before you arrive at the Sterling." Marcus crawled through the narrow shaft, every movement a risk. One wrong sound, and it was over. Finally, he emerged into the underground garage. His car was surely bugged, but in the far corner he spotted a maintenance van, the same one he remembered from his undercover visit. A long-forgotten skill from his rebellious college days came to his rescue. In minutes, the van roared to life. His phone lit up again. Another message from the anonymous caller. "Davidson isn't just attending a meeting. They're about to activate something called Protocol Zero. Whatever you do, don't let them finish that meeting." Marcus gripped the wheel tight. In his mind flashed the image of Richard, once doubted, now martyred. Marcus couldn't afford to fail. The Sterling Hotel loomed ahead, its glass facade gleaming like a mirror of hidden truths. Inside waited a world he once admired. Power suits, polished handshakes, but now revealed as a shell masking betrayal and control. He parked and donned the maintenance uniform he found in the van. Entering through the service entrance, Marcus slipped into the crowd preparing for the so-called International Financial Conference. A perfect cover for a meeting of the world's puppet masters. In the main lobby, Janet was already in place, posing as a high-profile guest. Through her earpiece, she whispered, "Top floor, presidential suite. Davidson just arrived." Marcus nodded and made his way to the employee elevator. The beginning of his final ascent. Not just to confront those behind it all, but to reclaim control of the truth from those who believed they had the right to rewrite history. Davidson had arrived with 6 others, each carrying a briefcase locked with quantum encryption. Every step they took signaled the end of the fragile balance holding the global economy in place. Marcus hit the elevator button. His heart pounded in his chest. Every piece now fit. The Global Financial Security Initiative wasn't just manipulating markets. They were rewriting the rules of global power. Standing before the thick doors of the presidential suite, Marcus could hear familiar voices from inside. "His Protocol Zero must be activated today," Davidson was saying, his tone eerily calm. "With our AI-drugged financial algorithm, we'll control every major market, every currency, every economic decision. No more human error, no more instability." "And what about Marcus Chin?" another voice asked. "Once Protocol Zero is active?" "He won't matter. No one will." Marcus didn't need to hear any more. He pulled out his phone, opened the preloaded video, and hit send. Immediately, every screen in the hotel, LED displays, conference room TVs, flickered and changed, broadcasting the evidence: secret meetings, market manipulation, footage of Davidson signing off on intentionally triggered financial collapses. The door to the suite burst open as security guards rushed out to investigate. Marcus slipped inside. Davidson was alone, seated before a quantum computer. "It's over, Samuel," Marcus said. Davidson didn't look up. His fingers continued flying across the keyboard. "You still don't get it, Marcus. We created order out of chaos. We stopped wars through financial power. We kept the world stable by stealing from innocent people, by pushing families into foreclosure and hopelessness." Marcus stepped closer. "Necessary sacrifices for the greater good," Davidson snarled. "Protocol Zero will remove the human element, the greed, the emotions, the errors." The hotel intercom came alive. Janet's voice rang out, crisp and defiant. "Quantum encryption breached. Protocol Zero's source code has been decrypted." Davidson's face twisted in disbelief. "Impossible. That encryption was built by my father." A deeper, steady voice cut in. "And he's worked better than anyone." Kevin Chen. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Janet's update. "All global financial oversight agencies have received the source code. They're seeing exactly how it was designed to steal from citizens and consolidate power into the hands of the initiative." Davidson lunged for his phone, but Marcus was faster. He held it up. "Looking for this?" Marcus said. "Your co-conspirators are already being arrested around the world." Davidson screamed. "Without us, the system will collapse." Marcus replied calmly, "No, Samuel. Something better will take its place." FBI agents stormed the room, led by James Cooper, now in full tactical gear, weapon drawn. Davidson was handcuffed, his eyes burning with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Marcus stood quietly, no longer angry, just sorrowful, for a mentor who had lost his way under the weight of a misguided mission. Marcus's phone buzzed. A call. This time, no voice distorter. "Congratulations, Marcus." "It's you," Marcus murmured. "Who are you?" "We're an independent watchdog organization. Our mission is to expose global financial corruption. Richard worked for us. He infiltrated the initiative from the inside, but when he was compromised, we needed someone else. And you passed the test." Silence. Then, the voice continued. "Now you have a choice. Help us rebuild the system. Transparent, fair. Your bank could lead the way." 3 months later, the lobby of Meridian Trust Bank was no longer cold or distant. Digital displays streamed real-time transaction data, making every dollar traceable and visible to customers. Trust was being restored, not through slogans, but through action. Mrs. Reynolds walked up, her eyes gleaming. "Thank you, Marcus, not just for my savings, but for everything you've done." Marcus nodded and smiled, but inside, he knew this was just the beginning. Janet, now Chief Transparency Officer, approached, tablet in hand. "The blockchain verification system is live, immutable. Every transaction is now permanently recorded." From across the floor, Kevin Chen, now head of cybersecurity, nodded. "And the ethical AI is fully deployed. It's identifying fraud faster than any human team ever could." Marcus turned and looked at the bank's new mission statement, displayed above the customer service center. "Financial trust begins with transparency." Beneath it, a wall of monitors streamed global market data in real time, a powerful symbol that banking could be both ethical and profitable. His phone buzzed again. A message from the secret organization, ready to help you tackle the next target. Marcus looked out the window. The city pulsed with its usual rhythm. Finance never stopped. But he was no longer just a man at the top of a power structure. He was a guardian of its foundation, where truth and justice began. He smiled, reading the final line from the organization that had quietly helped him expose the world's most powerful conspiracy. "The next target is ready," he replied simply. "Send me the details. There's still work to be done." As he walked through the main hall of the bank, Marcus was no longer just the CEO on the top floor. He was part of a reborn community. Employees greeted him with gratitude in their eyes. Customers smiled, relaxed, free from the shadow of suspicion. The invisible wall between institution and individual had been torn down, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt something profound, true pride. The images of the battle still played in his mind, but today, Meridian Trust had not only survived, it had ignited a quiet, powerful revolution. Other banks were beginning to follow suit. Transparency systems, ethical AI, a commitment to putting people first. He recalled something Richard had once said, years ago, when they were still idealistic young men. The financial world doesn't need more money. It needs more honesty. Back then, Marcus had thought his brother was just a dreamer. But now, in a bank completely transformed, he knew Richard had been right. The front page of the next day's paper carried the bold headline, "Meridian Trust sets new standard for banking ethics. A revolution in transparency begins." Marcus pinned the article to the bulletin board, right next to the last letter he'd received from Richard. From prison. "You found a better way. I'm proud of you, Marcus." No one who read those words in the bank could hold back a tear, because this story had begun with a denied loan and a vanished account, but ended with a blueprint for the world to follow. Marcus stood at the window of his office, watching the city awaken below. Buildings, traffic, flashing lights, everything looked the same. But inside him, the world had changed. There would always be those who sought to manipulate the system, always those who chose shortcuts, but there would also always be people willing to fight for what's right. And sometimes, it only took one person standing up to change everything. Janet walked in, tablet in hand. The blockchain verification system has now been fully implemented. Every transaction is now verifiable, immutable, and permanent. Evan Shen followed, nodding in agreement. The ethical AI is running flawlessly. It's catching fraudulent activity faster than our audit teams. Not a single dollar moves without a trace. Marcus turned and looked up at the bold new slogan above the trading floor. "Financial trust begins with transparency." Beneath it, rows of screens streamed live global market data, embodying the core principle he had fought to protect. Finance is not a weapon. It must be a tool that serves people. His phone buzzed again. A new message. "We're ready to join you on the next mission. See you soon. Global Financial Watchdog Organization." Marcus turned off the screen, took a deep breath, and stepped back into the lobby, where everyday people walked in with hope and confidence. Tomorrow would bring more battles. But today, he had earned something far greater than victory, a reborn sense of trust.